Have you ever wondered if you had a better relationship with money? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, this is Jill from the Northwoods, talking about life issues one small step at a time. So, as you know, I've had a podcast for the last 5 years, and I'm bringing back, on occasion, some of these podcasts that really stood out to me and helped me quite a bit. And even if you listened to this podcast initially when it first came out, I'm referring also to things that I've learned since then as well. When it comes time to having emergency savings or taking grand vacations that you've always wanted to take, it's hard, right? It's hard for us to go through and understand what it is that we want when it comes with money. And it's hard because money has a cost to it, and we get wrapped up into the emotion about it. Now, there was a book that I read a few years ago and I did the podcast on called Get Good with Money by Tiffany Aliche. And she is called the Budgetista. I think she also has a YouTube channel. She's so good. This is going to be talking about how we can save more money, get emergency savings. How can we get to the point where we're saving for something that we've always wanted to have or dreamed about having? And where she's going along and talking about money, one of the things I love about this book is it's very practical. It has a great tone to it. And had I had this book available to me when I was, in debt and trying to get out of debt, it would have helped me quite a bit. I have to tell you that, I spent years of my life greatly in debt. I didn't make very much money. I was spending it like crazy on stupid things. Like I said, I walked through this house, right now, and I'm getting rid of stuff, and half the stuff is stuff I bought back then. I'm like, oh, why did I had no money and I bought this? Ugh. And so you get into that head space about it. And I was scared of money. I was so frightened of it that anytime money came up as an issue because I got a bill, or maybe it was tax time, or my friends would bring up, hey, Jill, you really have to have some retirement savings. It would just grip me right here. It'd grip me right in my gut, too. And honestly, weight and money are the two biggest problems I've had my entire life. And when I started to learn to lose weight, believe it or not, it taught me how to get better with money. I kind of gathered around that phrase. How you do one thing is how you do everything. Once you learn discipline in one way, you can learn discipline in other ways. And so honestly, working with my trainer, building up muscle, losing the weight that I did back in the, before, it taught me a lot about money. And it taught me how I could get better with money. But this book would have helped me a great deal. She brings out this analogy where she talks about squirrel savings. A squirrel sees a beautiful day. Everything's perfect. The sun is shining, right? He's got to prepare for winter. Goes out there, starts collecting nuts, preparing for a time when life is maybe not so good. Human beings are almost the exact opposite. We see a beautiful day and we go buy a new car. We go on a vacation. We get happy and we think, wouldn't a new TV be awesome? And so we kind of think about happy times as being the exact opposite of a squirrel. If we could go back to being more like a squirrel, save during the good times, we will have a better time in our bad times. And she says that it helps to bolster ourselves up, that when we learn how to save, it will protect us from emergencies. And that's the primary, purpose of creating and maintaining savings, is to see you through tough times, to see you through when you don't have anything. And I think that was kind of why it was hard for me. Like my friend Em, she's really good with money, and she wanted me to save for my retirement. Like, it's 100 years away. I'm not saving for my retirement. I'm barely being able to pay the bills right now. Or I want to go on a trip. I want to go someplace and do something fun and exciting. Or, gee, my car is terrible out there. I really do need a new car. And instead, it's a different way of looking at money, because she says that if we are able to create savings, then we will have less panic in our lives. When some not emotional, but it becomes emotional, when some bill comes our way, we're not devastated. I remember back when I was, poor, as soon as I had $200 to my name, it was always kind of funny. I said I was cursed. My car would break down. And, you look at it as a curse because I suddenly had $200 that I could pay to get my car repaired, which sounds like a blessing, right? But it was always funny that anytime a big pile of money came my way, some random bill hit me and kept hitting me, and I could never get ahead. And at one time, I financed my house, and I was talking to the banker, and I said, "I just, keep getting behind on my credit card bills, and I don't know how to get out of this." And he said, which is the point of this book, well, the reason you never get out of it is because you have no emergency savings. So when the car breaks down, you have to, charge it, put it on a credit card, and now you're in debt and you're in trouble all over again. So what he tried to get me to do was to get my first $1,000 of savings in the account. He says, as soon as you get just $1,000 in your account, and this was, you got to adjust for inflation, your life is going to get better. Because now if the furnace breaks, the water heater breaks, your car breaks, you have something that you can now give to pay that off without going into debt. And that's what she's really talking about. Many of us live moment to moment without ever thinking about the future. We think that if we're having an abundant time, maybe we got a bonus, tax refund that we think of, oh, this is great. I'm going to go do something fun with this. Instead of thinking, what happens if all of this falls down? My car really breaks. The roof needs to be replaced. She wants us to be able to actually identify those things that are going to make our lives more abundant, to make our lives a little bit better. And I always got money. We get like $50 from grandma. Those are acorns. Squirrel them away. If you're getting a tax refund, squirrel them away. It's another acorn. And that's the idea, is that every time you have some sort of a thing happen to you good with money, it's a great way for you to squirrel away money. And it doesn't sound fun and it doesn't sound sexy, and I'll tell you about it. It becomes our backup plan. If my car breaks down, if my roof has to happen, now instead of having panic and avoidance, so, those are the two types of things. Whenever you have money problems, you either panic about it, which I did all the time, or I'm going to avoid it. I used to have problems sleeping, right? And then all of a sudden, I had a savings account and I didn't worry about that. If you were listening to this podcast a couple of years ago, I had hail damage on my roof, and the insurance company came out and was terrible about it and just said, oh, well, your roof is super old. And I was like, yeah, it's super old, but it was working until the hail, came along. So they weren't going to pay anything for it. I didn't panic because now suddenly I have an emergency savings. And so we get to squirrel away the money. Just to give you an idea of what I eventually did is I got to the place where I was living okay on my salary. Bills were getting paid, and I wasn't getting rich or anything like that, but bills were getting paid. And so every time I got a raise, whatever that raise amount of money was, it went automatically into my savings account. So I never saw the raise. And I did that for probably a decade, and it added up. And so suddenly I had an emergency savings, and that made life a lot easier. To be honest with you, my emergency roof that I had done, I was actually able to pay for in cash and not even touch my emergency savings. So that shows you how far I've come from panicking about bills to, dread and sleepless nights because of something happened. The first thing I always asked, it was you could just see it in my life. The car, I'd take my car in, to get an oil change. They said, oh, well, we, see something in the transmission. My first question, how much? I don't care what you saw. How much? How much is it? I was panicked about it all the time. And so you can overcome these events once you start putting those acorns into your savings account. And we have to just stop getting into debt over and over again because we don't have that. So we have our, that acorn list, the list of all the surprise monies that come in that aren't really so much a surprise. Maybe it's a tax refund. Maybe it's the end of the year raise. Maybe you get a bonus at work. Start squirreling those acorns away. And once we have about 6 months of savings, so if something were to happen, your company folded, you lost your job, could you live for 6 months without a job? That will cover all those things. And if your car breaks down, something happens where you have to stay in a hotel, like, we've had gas leaks around in town where all of a sudden they evacuate you out and people have to go to a hotel and they'll say, I don't have the money for a hotel. And now they're scrambling to go find someplace to stay while the gas leak gets fixed in their neighborhood. Once you have that 6 months of savings squirreled away, a bit of relief comes in, right? Now you can handle an emergency. And that banker who told me about the $1,000 was right. That was the end of me getting into serious debt because suddenly I had the money to take care of it. Okay. So once we get that individual 6 months of savings emergency fund going, and again, it's not there for a trip, it's not there for the computer you want to buy. It's there for emergencies. Now, once we have that in place, now we can start sort of identifying what is it that we have that aren't emergencies that we're looking for? Do you need a new car? Is there a trip that you always wanted to take that you're hoping to go to in a couple of years? You break those down into 12 monthly accounts and see how much money you can put away towards those things. And they start identifying those things that, really mattered. So a couple of years ago, I had a 15-year-old car. I needed a new car. I live in dangerous, right now it's like -12. If my car breaks down, it could be deadly, right? So I need a new car. I needed a new roof. I would like to take a trip again someday, those kinds of things. So that's when once your emergency savings in place, then you can start looking at the other things. And it's not as horrible as it sounds. I did not want to get 6 months of savings, emergency savings, because I'm like, that's all the money I have in the world. I'm going to be like this for years, and it wasn't that bad. As soon as I started actually dedicatedly putting those acorns away, it started accumulating, quite quickly. The next part is she talks about having what she calls a noodle budget. And I love this idea of a noodle budget. The idea is think about the lowest amount of money you could survive on, right? This is what I just got done talking about BATNAs and WATNAs, right? The best alternative and the worst alternative. This is the worst alternative. Let's say your company folded, you can't find a job, we're having economic troubles, whatever it is. What is the bare minimum budget you have to live on? Well, I have to pay the mortgage on this house and I have to pay the taxes on this house. Okay. I have to keep at least a minimal amount of heat on in this house because, like I said, it's super cold outside. But do I need to have Netflix? No. Do I need to, go on this trip I was planning on going to later? And like I said, this idea of this budget is not about how much fun you're going to have. It's going to be about how can I live if the worst thing happens, and not going into my emergency savings, but what's the bare minimum I could live in? And I sort of figured out, like, at some point what it is I could live on if everything, went horribly wrong. This was pretty easy for me to sort of figure it out and figure out then exactly what this noodle budget was. And then once I had that noodle budget in place, then I understood how much money I was really spending on things that absolutely had to happen. If I lost my job, I would still need to have internet. You could do without it. I could go to the library. That is something optional, but it still would be great to keep the internet, but I don't need a lot of the other things. I have to pay my electric bill. I have to pay the water bill, those kinds of things. So anyway, once I had that in place and I had that emergency savings in place, life got really good for me. And suddenly the panic started coming out of money entirely. So back when I was, struggling, and like I said, I eventually got to the point where I was living comfortably. And it was because I got a job at a very hard company that paid pretty well. And the problem with this company is they fired people all the time. It just willy-nilly. I mean, it just was a very hard company to stay at. She demanded the best from everybody. But at that point, my bills were getting paid. I could go on a vacation here or there as long as it wasn't extravagant. I could go out to dinner for a time. And then I started, like I said, putting money towards my 401k, my Roth IRA, because I already had that emergency savings. So I started taking that money that I'd been putting in my emergency savings and started putting in towards retirement money. And so I did that again for another decade, where every dime that I had that was that acorn money started going into my retirement. And now that I've been working on that for a while, I will be able to retire, I think. I think it's going to be okay. And you'll have to see, I think what works best for you. But she said that you have to ask yourself anytime you're going to buy something, do I need it? Do I love it? Do I even like it? Or do I even want it? A lot of times when we buy stuff, we kind of want it. We don't really know. She hopes that with these questions, you can start analyzing whether or not you really should buy this thing. She said that even if you can wear a wristband on it, She says that she sold, these wristbands. I don't know if she still does. But the idea is that she wants you to know that even if this is a low-cost item, are you gonna enjoy it in a month? Are you gonna just throw it away in a month? If it's a high-cost item, let's say, takes 3 to 6 months for you to pay for this thing, is it still gonna bring you joy? It makes me think of those Marie Kondo people. Does this spark joy? But anyway, the idea is that if we buy stuff, there's a lot of stuff that you buy and it doesn't mean anything to you. You don't even think about it again. I'm trying to think of something that I have around here, but the idea that, oh, I bought, Post-it note tape, do I care about this? Well, it's kind of handy, but I could have done without it, that kind of thing. So it actually kind of makes me a little bit of sad because I've been going through this house and throwing out a lot of things and now realizing that I I never loved the thing. That there are some things I bought that lightsaber at Disneyland, love it. I love my lightsaber from Disneyland. That's something that actually gives me joy. But when you talk about some other things that I've paid for that I'm now currently throwing out of my house as I organize it, it's really kind of disappointing. Anyway, and like I said, it's sad because you said, "Oh, I had such dreams for this. I was going to do this and I was going to do that." And then instead, didn't pan out. Or sometimes it's kind of interesting too. You bought the cheapest possible version of it, and it ended up to be garbage. And the interesting thing about me and Em is that Em always expects her money to buy something amazing. And I tend not to have expectations about that. It is whatever, to her, but she demands to buy very good scissors. The difference is that I'm buying a pair of scissors and then those break, and then I buy another pair of scissors and then those break, and she buys something that will be valuable for a long time. So there's a way of looking at value too, that are you buying the same stupid garbage over and over again, or are you actually spending your money? One of the things that got me to stop buying like games and books and things is that, am I going to read it tonight? Am I going to play this video game tonight? And if the answer was yes, I will sit down and play this video game tonight, then I allowed myself to buy it. Because so many times I would go, back in the CD-ROM age, buy myself a couple of games. You know how many of those games were sitting in my closet unopened because I never got to them? Maybe I opened up the first one and I loved that game and I never played the other three. And now I just wasted, back in the day, $100 worth of games so that I didn't need to buy. So that's how I got myself to do it. But things were getting really burdensome to me and filling up this house and buying things. So again, just stop thinking about money and start thinking about money as time. This was another great lesson for me. And she mentions this in the book too, that if I were to say like, oh, I don't know, I'm trying to imagine what it is. Okay, let's talk about like, you got the iPhone, right? And you got the iPhone and you divide it up with your salary. You'd say, oh, is this worth it for me to work, 20 hours to get this iPhone? 20 hours of my time is going to work to get that iPhone. Or maybe it is, but maybe it's not. So that's the other part and thing is that if you can get money out of the realm of money and start thinking about a time and how much time you are investing in getting that thing, that might help you do something. There are things that we really love and that we would love to do more of, but ultimately, many of the things that we buy have no bearing in our lives and we don't care about, and we got to get rid of those types of things. She says that eventually we will understand the best ways to spend our money, but it's going to be about living more of our, kind of true life. What is actually going to make my life better and what is not? Is going on this trip, is buying this game, is reading this book. Are those things I'm actually going to do? Am I going to read that book? Am I going to enjoy that vacation? Am I going to enjoy that video game or that wall of yarn I have sitting back there? And when you start working on getting your finances back into a proper perspective, then suddenly everything will start to fall into place. I remember in the book, she talked about like she was going to save money so she could go on a balloon ride in Albuquerque. That was always something she wanted to do. She also wanted to save money so she could go to a trip to Greece. And she talked about how her friend called her a cheapskate. Oh, you won't even go out and eat with us anymore. You won't go out and have fun with us anymore. And then she ended up going on her trip to Greece, And her friends were like, "Wow, how did you make that fantastic trip happen?" And it's because she actually started focusing on the things she really wanted and stopped doing the things that were okay, and that maybe she didn't really want, and that she was able to go on this, fantastic trip. So putting things in the proper, priority is important. She says a couple things that you can do is you can automate savings. I talked about that. I had money pulling directly out of my savings account, so I never saw it. I never think about it. It was going out into these other accounts. I had a separate account that was there for my emergency savings, so I would never see it. I still never see it. Every once in a while, I look at it and go, "Oh, look at that. There's the money in my savings account." So having things automated, having things happen automatically. I was someone, let me put it this way. M is someone who budgets everything. How much she's going to spend on books and how much she's going to spend on this and how much she's going to spend on that. What I did instead was I actually broke things down into 3 separate categories. Things that were the mandatory that were the same price every month. And that's going to be my property taxes, my house, the mortgage on my house. And then there was things that were mandatory that cost variable amounts of money, and that's gonna be things like the electric bill, the water bill, something like that. And then everything else was optional. So I took that noodle budget and split them into those 2 categories, variable and set. And then I took everything else and said, "This is optional." I don't actually budget money in the way of, how much am I gonna spend on office supplies and how much am I gonna spend on books? I don't really care. If I bought 3 extra books this month, then I'm gonna spend less on buying a video game, that kind of thing. I don't buy video games as much anymore, but you understand that essentially just, um, automating savings. So all the money that went to bills went into this account where the bill money got drawn out and paid. So I just had to make sure money was enough in there so that it could pay the bills. Then everything that was left in my savings account that didn't get, portioned out, also the emergency savings and my retirement savings, what was left in there is money that I could actually spend, and so I could actually see that I have money in those accounts. Now, I think that the worst part about it is if you have no impulse control or you can't, stop yourself from spending money. The real problem is then you may see a ton of money in there and you say, "Oh, this is gonna be fun. I'm gonna go on a trip to Greece." But, the idea is that now I have this honest ability to see how much money I actually have to buy a new phone or to buy a car, because everything that was a part of mandatory spending got taken out. I've never even seen it. So that's kind of how I do it. But she does something, I think too, that was very interesting. We talked about, the different accounts that you can have. So the idea is, one, she talks about having a checking account where paychecks go. Then the other one is a checking account where bill money comes out. That's, what I was doing too. Then there's another account for the 6-month saving. Yep, never see that. And then the last one is everything else. And then that's exactly the direction I went after reading this book. So when I go to a store and if I look and I say, "Well, can I buy myself a new iPhone or do I want to buy myself this new shirt?" I know exactly how much money I have to spend that kind of money. So again, it's a very calm way of building up money so that you'd be able to have this interesting idea about exactly what money is to you and how much, like I said, if your friend invites you to go to a show, downtown, someone, you want to buy a concert, do you have the money? You now can look and see how much money is actually dedicated to something else, or do you really have something to buy? So I hope that this helps. I like this idea that makes you think about where you're pulling money out and, put it somewhere else, like I said, so you don't see it, but then also having a money in a place so that you can actually look at that money and say, "You know what? I do want to buy this thing. I do want to buy this new watch or this new phone. I have the money. I can literally see it in this account." And that way it gives you peace of mind. Not just peace of mind that I can pay for my bills and not just peace of mind that you can pay for emergencies or have retirement. I have the money in this day-to-day fund to know, can I afford a new phone? Can I do that? And that'll give you comfort and take the panic out of money. So again, this is really about knowing what it is we should do, knowing how it is that we should live our lives, and then saving money eventually for the exciting things that you want to do. It's even better when you know that you can go and do the fun things that you're wanting to do without panic, without worrying anymore. I think that it's nice, like I said, to know that you could go and take a vacation if you wanted to. It's all fun. And I know that a lot of people are big on these really nice vacations. But what's more amazing is knowing that your bills are going to get covered. It helps you sleep at night. Knowing that if you had an emergency roof or emergency car repair, I have the money to take care of it. And so essentially, like I said, figuring out where your acorns are, putting together that noodle budget, and then splitting your money out into separate accounts is going to make you feel a whole lot more secure about things. And while, budgeting for vacations is a lot more exciting and a lot more fun, day-to-day peace is so amazing because now you're not worried what happens to me next. I hope that helps you. Again, we're going to talk about money in the next couple of episodes here because I think that it's something that panics a lot of people, and they don't know how to deal with money. They don't know how to save with money. And like I said, if you don't know where to start, this Tiffany Aliche book, How to Get Good with Money, is amazing. And she really is just one of the best out there. I don't know why. I've listened to people, including Em and including a lot of people, talk about how to save money. I don't want to say lecture, but, you should do this and you should do that. For whatever reason, this book spoke to me. And like I said, I just sort of wish I had it when I was having bad times with money. Everyone, thanks so much. Appreciate you being out there. Please leave a comment in the chat channel or say hi. Or if you have something you just want to say to me, I promise I'll keep it private. Email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. Thanks so much and have a great day.